Now, you may have heard or read the phrase that is thrown around a lot on social media. Formula 1 is all about the money these days, but the truth is there's always been money involved in Formula 1, it's just been done slightly differently at slightly different times. And since the advent of sponsorship in the late 1960s and into the 1970s and beyond, sponsors have seen the money pit in Formula 1 grow and grow and grow, to the point where the sport is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is now so expensive that they're trying to do things behind the scenes to bring those costs down. Stuff like the ditching of the MGUK and the cost cap, but I think the MGUK is just a way of strong-arming VW into the sport. But with no money, you don't go racing. In fact, nobody really built a Formula 1 car for the first race at Silverstone in 1950 and instead ran derivatives of pre-war machinery, either a 1.5 litre supercharged or a 4.5 litre naturally aspirated engine. Which is probably why I can't find out how much those cars actually cost to build. Let's just say for the time they were quite expensive. I mean, after all, it was 5 years after the end of the war, so the economy was still it was still rationing in Britain. Now, if you look at the entry list for the races in that time, you'll find that it was mostly the manufacturers taking any serious interest in things, and anybody else was just some rich boy in a customer car. And there was actually a Thai prince and a jazz musician on the entry list for that first Formula 1 World Championship race at Silverstone in 1950, and Alfa Romeo, Ferrari and Talbot were the only ones to contest most of the races. In fact, the only one that those three didn't turn up for was the Indy 500, which was part of the World Championship at that time. So to be involved at a serious level, you had to be a motoring manufacturer, and at that time that's what F1 was and in a way still is. A competition for the manufacturers and the constructors rather than the drivers. I mean, look at how successful Verstappen, Hamilton, Schumacher, Senna, Stewart, Hunt, Button and so on were without the top cars. I've said it a million times, ain't nobody winning anything in a Minardi or a Haas or a 40. So with manufacturing money, you're sorted. Sort of. I mean, you can recoup your losses building and racing by selling cars. You won on Sunday and you sold on Monday, which I believe that phrase was first coined in Australia during the 1970s at the height of the Peter Brock years in the ATCC, which is now V8 supercars or just supercars. But for the privateers, you made your money back through what's known as starting money. Now, starting money was sorted on a sliding scale, much like the prize money on offer for winning the Constructors' Championship, except it was paid after every race. And I'm sure that Formula 1 still does pay per race, but nowhere near what it pays for the lump sum that goes to the teams at the end of the season from a prize pot that's worth about several hundred million. Whether this was done on a race-by-race basis, I can't figure out, but I assume, and you're free to correct me if you have actually found the information, that if you did well at the previous race, you get paid more at the next race, and you'd already have your prize money for winning the previous race if that's actually what happened, you know, if you follow me. So basically what it meant is that teams and drivers were being paid to race as opposed to paying to race, and there was actually a controversy surrounding starting money at the very first Formula 1 World Championship race in 1950 because it was the first ever World Championship race. The authorities probably had their own way of sorting out the starting money. Either everybody got paid the same or they paid the manufacturers slightly more, or they might have paid the privateers slightly more, you know, trying to keep it fair. I can't find the exact numbers anywhere, and that's actually quite annoying because I'd love to be able to show you, but the story goes is that Enzo Ferrari saw how much he was going to be paid, saw how much everybody else was going to be paid, and went, I'm not being paid more than everybody else, I'm not going to bother turning up. Now that story is probably exaggerated or just flat out made up, but if it is true, why are we not surprised? But I have, however, found the accounts for the Cooper Car Company from the October of 1958, detailing the payments to Jack Brabham following the Moroccan Grand Prix at Casablanca for Formula 2. Starting money for the race was 480,000 francs, or £384, no shillings, no pence. Prize money for winning the race was 500,000 francs, which is about, what, 400 quid? 75,000 francs for the fastest lap gets added to everything else, and an estimated total of about £860, 0 shillings, 0 pence. Dunlop, the tyre supplier, paid Cooper £60 as a bonus, while Cooper paid their £5 retainer to Brabham. So all in, Cooper is £909, 0 shillings, 0 pence up. But then they need to start divvying all that money out. It was the Casablanca loan, whatever that is, that was 60,000 francs or £48. Now I'm assuming that the Casablanca loan was either travel costs or it was Brabham's buying of that car for that race, the rental or whatever you want to call it. It could be anything, but it's on there. Cooper took £184 of the prize money and another £30 for bonuses, and then paid the mechanics another £23, and finally another £15 off for some overpayments that they made in Germany. Total balance due to Mr. Brabham, £609, no shillings, no pence. In today's money, that's £14,550 and 57p. Which isn't bad for a weekend's work in the second category of motor racing. And I also know what you're thinking. What the hell are shillings and pence and all of that stuff? Yeah, this is pre-decimal Britain where currency was divided by 12, not by 10 like the rest of the world. My parents understand it, but then again, they're boomers. Like, actual boomers. They were born in the 50s. They're old. And that's how it worked, because teams would run in the colours of their countries and would carry the badge of a manufacturer somewhere on the car, but that was about it. And it wasn't until the mid-60s or so that Lotus started putting Team Lotus and the names of the drivers in large letters on the cars, and then Honda followed suit in about 1966. But in the late 1960s, BP and Shell withdrew financial support, and Firestone said they were going to stop giving free tyres to teams. And also at this point, the cost of running a Formula 1 team had gone up to about £100,000 in old money, which was a lot. So the teams had to try and make ends meet, because they had to keep the team running while at the same time still be competitive. So fast forward to the Lady Wigram Trophy in 1968. The teams turned up and headed out onto the track. There's Chris Amon in his red Ferrari. There goes Denny Hulme in his sky blue Brabham. There's Pedro Rodriguez in his dark green BRM. And hey look, there's Jim Clark in his red, white and gold Lotus. What? Colin Chapman wasn't the first to do this, but he'd approached the Imperial Tobacco Company and struck a deal with them to advertise their Gold Leaf tobacco brand, a deal worth £100,000. This in turn would cover the costs of Jim Clark and Graham Hill's cars for the season, and the starting money, prize money and stuff like that, more of that could go to the drivers. And guys like Clark, Hill, Jackie Stewart, Jackie Ickx and drivers like those who rose to the top got richer as a result of more sponsorship coming in. Then by the time everybody had sponsorship, specifically the tobacco sponsorship for the most part, and that's a topic I've covered and should probably go into again because it's quite interesting to me and that video could do with an update. Basically what happened was, when all of that kicked off, is that drivers like Hunt and Lauda became the first to properly enjoy the money that was coming into Formula 1. And then when Bernie Ecclestone bought the commercial rights, that money went up further still, but maybe Bernie's takeover is a story for another day. So that is how teams made money prior to sponsorship appearing on cars in the late 1960s. If you've learned something here today, then give the video a like, and if you want more like this, then subscribe and click that bell if you haven't already so you never miss out on a future video. As always, a massive thank you to the good folk of Patreon for their continued support, and if you do want to give me a monthly tip, you can do so by following the link in the description, where you'll also find a link to Discord and also some vague directions to my socials. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind. I am now off to get what's left of my haircut because, let's be honest, this is getting out of control. And I'll see you all again on Wednesday or so, depending on how I'm feeling for another video. So I'm going to go get my hair cut before I fall asleep again from fatigue. So until next time, see ya.